Hey, security peeps. We are live with another edition of Breaking Into Cybersecurity. I am Renee Small, cybersecurity super recruiter, helping awesome leaders hire great talent. And I am here in place of my co host, Chris Foulon, today while he is off traveling. And I have an awesome special guest with me today. I have Dan Klein. Say hi to everybody, Dan.
Howdy, how you doing?
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here. So, folks, before we get started, I know Chris always tells us, I know right now we are streaming live to LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, and we should have been on Chris's Facebook page, but it seems like there's some kind of glitch there that's not happening. But in any event, please follow us, subscribe, hit the subscribe button on YouTube. We are definitely trying to continue to grow our network and have you listen to awesome people like Dan and learn about how he has broken into security. So, Dan, Chris shared with me that somebody's saying no sound.
Hmm,
There's no sound.
I
We
can
don't
hear you
hear the
just fine.
sound. I can hear me fine too. That's very, very odd. Um, I'm going to check into that while I do a quickie introduction. But Chris had shared with me that you transitioned from DevSecOps, is it?
I'm in DevSecOps currently. Yes.
You're in DevSecOps, but you came from a sysadmin role?
Yeah, I started out sysadmin early in my career and kind of bounced around to do a few different things and ended up in a DevSecOps role currently.
Okay, perfect. Well, talk to us more about that. Please introduce yourself.
Sure. So, good afternoon for those on the East Coast. My name is Dan Klein. I'm honored to be here with you, Renee. And no, just a brief introduction to me. So I'm currently a people leader in the cybersecurity space and the DevSecOps space for a major financial services company on the East Coast. And I've been with them for the last 14 years. I started out in a very pure IT technical role as a sysadmin. Really enjoyed it, and in fact, to this day, sometimes I wonder. I'd love to go back to it sometimes because it's very looking back at it, it's quite simple compared to the work that we do in security. Something's broken, you fix it, and you move on. Not to say that that's when you're in it, sometimes you want to be out of it sometimes. So maybe that's a longing for stuff I've done in the past. So in between then and now, I've worked in various deeply technical roles in configuration management, done work with CI/CD pipelines directly, right? Not from a security standpoint, but simply from a provisioning and build engineering aspect of that. And where I currently am, I am, like I mentioned before, I'm a people leader in the DevSecOps space. My team works on integrations into our enterprise pipeline. So, using SAST and not ASC tooling. It's the dependency management. I'm trying to remember what the acronym is for it without revealing the vendor, of course. So yeah, we're obviously doing this for a large enterprise, and it's a challenge for a small enterprise, and it's certainly not easy for large enterprises. So there's new threats every day, and we all know what we've been dealing with lately. Log4j is one of the larger examples, but it's certainly been an active field, and I've enjoyed being part of it. There are times where, like I mentioned earlier, I'd love to go back to be doing basic sysadmin work, but there's obviously a lot of growth potential, not just from a financial standpoint, but legitimate understanding of trade-offs between okay, how risk averse are we versus how much do we want to limit enablement. So I've really enjoyed it. I've enjoyed the kind of bouncing around doing different things, and I found that security has been something that's challenging on a daily basis, but also rewarding in terms of just knowing that you're enabling your peers and your company and those around you to be more secure, but also trying to help them do the right thing at the end of the day, hopefully not just telling them no all the time, which I know unfortunately we're known for that in security, regardless of where you work. I think that's people see you as no, and so my goal is and that of my peers is to say, how can we do it securely, not no, but trying to help them move towards a secure solution for their issues. So that's a little bit about me and maybe a little bit about my kind of rationale and background in terms of how I view security.
That's awesome and good to hear, the transition and that I want to dig deeper into. But before I do that, I also forgot for people to shout out where they are listening from, where they're watching from, around the country, around the world. We always have some really cool folks that are all over, and we don't know where they're coming in from. And this is somebody on Twitch who says it's Samuel um Agaycom, I believe, and he's saying it's his first time here. So welcome. Welcome, welcome. We are here. Chris is usually here every Friday, and we're typically on Thursdays as well. So it's great to have you here, and hopefully we can get some good information. And there's some folks that said that the Julia Julio is from Texas. The sound is working, so it's good. So yeah, so definitely keep shouting out where you're from. So Dan, I'm always curious as to why people move and transition into new roles. So you were a sysadmin, like you said. You thought that you were in the heat of it all, and then you move over into wacky security, where there's a whole lot more going on. But what made you, talk to us about your career progression? Because I think people who are maybe sysadmins right now wondering, wow, how did he move over? Um, it's always a really interesting story. So let us know, how did that happen?
Sure. So, I mean, that's a fantastic question. And if you were to ask me what I was doing when I was in, this was back in 2008, being a sysadmin, I would not have told you that. I would not have thought that I would actually end up in security. Like, it was a desire of mine, not really not from a career standpoint, but just like, I like trying to break things apart and trying to see how I can not break them, but like how I can maybe exploit some limitations, right? And not in a nefarious way, right? Not in an illegal or anything like that, but more of just like, hey, how can you get something to do something it shouldn't do? So that's obviously not what I do on a day-to-day basis, but the way I was looking, the way the transition took place was, I didn't go right from being a sysadmin into security, although that's a path that a lot of people take, because oftentimes sysadmins are fantastic in security because they are butting heads with the security people all day. So we know that, right? But that actually makes them great candidates, because they understand the system, and that's the best thing about them. Like, hey, you have to then understand how that plays into risk and how you interact with your business clients and things like that. But at the end of the day, those are great folks. So for me, there were a few intermediate steps. Security wasn't as big of a thing as it was in 2008 than it is now, obviously. So the steps kind of in between were, first I transitioned to a configuration management role, looking at, today the example would be through Ansible, right? Using Ansible to automate deployments. Back then we were using a proprietary technology because Ansible wasn't as popular. It was actually a homegrown tool set internal to the company, which was its own brand of fun. But I'll save that conversation for another day. And then from there, that's when I moved into the CI/CD pipeline team, where we were working with the pipeline on a day-to-day basis. So you can kind of see the progression from sysadmin to configuration management to CI/CD pipeline, and where I am now is kind of wrapping those almost three skill sets into the work that I do and that my team does every day. Now, obviously, I'm layering people leadership and project management on top of that, which is its own brand of fun. But I think what people need to realize is, and oh, by the way, I had an intermediate step where I was an individual contributor on the team before I became the people leader. So I think so what my career progression, at least what it would show your viewers and others interested in it, is, hey, there's no straight path to security. And I think that the good thing is that in some ways, the more non-security roles that you take up before you come into security, that can position you as a more well-rounded candidate for folks like me, who is a hiring manager, right? Because if I hear, like, I'm not saying that I would pick myself necessarily for a role, but just looking at what the qualities of the individual candidates and say, hey, I've done all these things in different areas and I really want to get into security, but man, I've got all my bases covered and from a technical standpoint. I'm not saying you have to do this, but I think it makes you a better candidate because you've seen different aspects of the things that we run into in security all the time. So I think, so to answer your question, yeah, it was not a straight career trajectory into security, by no means. But at the same time, it was beneficial, I think, for my career to kind of try out different areas before I went into security full force. So I think, yeah, the end benefit for folks to know is, hey, it's okay to do a few different things. And, I got lucky, I'll be honest, right? I had a leader who went out of his way to kind of like I told him I was passionate about security, and he went out of his way to make it to enable me to make that transition. So I don't know if that was another question you might have based on some of the things I shared with Chris ahead of time, but yeah, I'll leave it there for now.
I think what what you shared was, there's so many nuggets in that. One, I think people get discouraged when they don't get an opportunity directly into security. And it's interesting that all the steps that you took, and from sysadmin to security, like to where you are now or to the interim role, how many years was that?
Oh geez, I mean, so I so I started as a sysadmin in 2008, and only in, I think it was 2018 when I actually formally entered like an actual role where it had the word security in it in the security organization. So I mean
Right.
that's a decade, right?
But you were doing some security stuff in between. Like, it's obvious, like, as a sysadmin, like you said, the great thing about being a sysadmin is that you're butting up with security all the time. So you're learning the nuances, you're understanding, all of these various things that have been happening. Um, and so it's it's so interesting because I think that more people would get into security if they pivoted from another area, especially in technology. I've seen it happen so often. And if they're really, really focused about it, I mean, you took a path where you did various things to eventually get to security in 10 years, because I don't want people to be like, oh my God, I don't have 10 years.
No.
It can be a shorter path than that, much shorter, but it's a way in versus banging your head against the wall, on the outside. It's like a circuitous path, but you're still getting to the end result. And I think that that is, what you shared. I don't want people to not pick that up. Like, this is where you were. You had you saw what was happening in security. Then you went into, incrementally in these other roles to where you are now. And, for those of us who are a little bit older, 10 years, it may seem like a super long time when you're 21, but it really it comes so fast. It comes
True.
so fast. And we can do it in a shorter period of time. So, Dan, what other roles do you think are similar to sysadmin roles? And if you don't know, that's fine too. But I have a feeling you may know any other roles that you've seen that people have had that you think like, wow, like this person would be great. And now you have a security team, so you now have to start looking at this like, oh, if I can't hire X, like who can I bring in to train? Who may already have like a lot of these skills and kind of have the understanding, so they'll be easier to train up. What other roles have you seen people do that you think would be like an easier transition into security?
Yeah, so I know it's a stereotype, and I know some people. My own sister is interested in doing some more IT oriented stuff, and we've gone back and forth about, can should you try out like a help desk job first? I know that, like I said, that's a stereotype, and then people get upset and they're like, well, but you can have an entry level cybersecurity job, and that's true, they exist. It is a challenge, right? And I think there is, I'll be candid, right? I think there is some gatekeeping that goes on, but at the end of the day, I think there's no harm in a help desk job where, like, even if you're like, I go back to some of the things that I put on for my CISSP when I passed it, right? Like some of the areas of expertise, it's like, hey, I've reset user passwords. That counts as doing some security work. And I think what people need to understand, and I'm maybe going off a bit of a tangent, but I think what people need to understand is in security, at least in the, where the market is currently, resetting someone's password and maybe understanding roles in an IAM system is actually a pretty awesome experience to have, and that makes you actually more marketable. So help desk, even an entry level developer, Java, JavaScript, Ruby, Python, right? If you can the way I look at it is if you can spin your experience in a way that you're saying like, hey, for example, if you're a developer, you're like, hey, I'm writing security tests, right? And you can parlay that into, hey, I understand it, and maybe I understand security in a different context, but at the end of the day, I'm able to, bring that experience here, and you bring value just by the experience that you have. It isn't necessarily something that you are doing on the weekends. Like, you're doing it for your day job, you're getting paid for it, so you're not some people love to do, Raspberry Pi things, but that's obviously up to them. So yeah, I think, roles, help desk analyst, there's no harm in that. Entry level programming roles, a lot of, I guess, roles kind of adjacent to those, I would think, right? And I know they've got varying names. There's like help desk analyst or help desk, support, things like that. And I would say, actually, what I should have said from the beginning was it is dependent on what area of security you're interested in, right? So, for example, if you're going to go into threat hunting or red teaming or blue teaming, right? Those areas are going to have kind of needs that are different. And I think, going back to the example I shared earlier, I think it's helpful to know, what am I targeting? Okay, how can I take the position that I'm in currently and make it so that, I've advised some mentees that I've spoken with over the years. I've said to them, I said, look, like, have a target role in mind, and then once you have that target role in mind, you can then say, okay, here's the things I'm paid to do on a day-to-day basis in my current job. How can I do more things that get me closer to the role that I'm looking at? So I think, it's good to have those roles in mind, those entry-level roles in mind to like get you to it. But I think more important is to have kind of build in some security practices to your current role based on the role that you're seeking. And I think that'll always do you good, regardless of the role you're going into, regardless of the field, right? Like if you wanted to be I don't know, like a dairy farmer at some point, right? It's like, hey, maybe you won't be able to do that on a programming basis, but hey, you want to, maybe you're reading up on things during the day, right? So I think that advice is pretty universal in terms of, hey, what role am I targeting? It isn't necessarily like, I want to get into security. Okay, well, there's a lot, right? There's a lot there. So so that's what I would say is, the roles are varied, and it is based on the area of security that you're interested in.
I think that's fantastic advice. I mean, just reverse engineering your way into security without trying to go after that security analyst entry level role that are becoming fewer and fewer in the marketplace. I mean, before it used to be the SOC analyst, but a lot of SOC analysts have been outsourced. There's so many different things. So, and I also want to make people aware that this is not only purely, brand new traditional college grad, brand new person, that folks who are already well into their career. So, some of the things you talked about, junior developers, Python developers, things like that. You could be a senior, seasoned Python developer and bump right over into application security because, depending on what it is, this is what you're doing. So you're on the flip side of it. Now you're going on to the other side.
Right.
So I just wanted to make people aware of that one aspect. And then also reverse engineering. I love how you described, like, hey, the adjacent role to the role that you want. So you may not be able to get directly into a security analyst position, but what can you get to that's like right next to the security analyst position that works with the security analyst, so that now, the next step or two steps away is this role. So really understanding, rounding out those skills and doing your due diligence and research. And research isn't only reading it somewhere, because it's very hard when you read a security analyst role. It's probably not going to say, well, we liaison with sysadmins, it's not going to say that, right? So talking to people like Dan, talking to the other folks that I know Chris has been doing a phenomenal job of talking to on this version of the podcast, and even the CISO Thursdays version, where they could say, oh yeah, like we have to talk to these people every week. When in one of the companies I work with, there was internal audit was like pretty much parked out in our back, like literally there all the time. They liaisoned they were always there. We had all these controls, we had these various issues. They were always there. So guess who? One of the people that got into security, one of those IT internal auditors, so that's the way it works, because you want that person's expertise. The person and the leader is like, you know what, these internal auditors are on our back. Let me bring one, and this person's interested. I can train him up on something else, but I want to use his other expertise in the internal audit space. Okay, what are they coming for with this? What are they looking for with that? That's the reason why we say, like, don't throw away, as we sometimes say in the US. I know there's people from the UK and stuff, but don't throw away the baby with the bathwater. Like, don't feel like because you have 15 years of experience as an administrative assistant, then that is not useful for you in
Right.
somewhere in security. Um, so I just want to really reiterate that. So I'm going to shout some people out as we always do, as folks are here from different parts of the country and the world. So Julio, like I said, is here from Texas. Xavier is checking in from Rocket City, Huntsville, Alabama, which is cool. Our buddies over at InfoSec Live said nothing wrong with making your own luck. So, Dan, when you were talking about earlier, getting yourself into that role, Vincent Thomas, hey Vincent, is out here from Baltimore. We have Simon is here, yay, from the UK. Simon from the UK, Grace in Connecticut. And then Sam again says, my software development software developer systems engineer student. So he is or she is a software developer systems engineer student, web security AI in the degree. So also in cybersecurity. So I believe he has 4 years in cybersecurity. So please, actually, what field can he go into? Seems like a lot of different fields he could potentially go.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at that, right, and just trying to parse it, it seems like, hey, he or she is in a software development, done some system engineering, web security, things like that. I mean, like we were talking about earlier, the folks who work in development have often been fantastic in AppSec, right, and looking at both manual and automated security, right? We all know there's plenty of SaaS tooling out there. There's a vendor who would love to sell to you every day. But also, there are still some firms who do manual assessments. And so actually, one of the things that we utilize where I work, we do utilize some external folks who do that kind of work for us on our behalf. So you could always get connected with those firms that do that if that's what you want to do every day. And then there's obviously an opportunity to do that within the company full time. So I think just I'm looking at those varied fields. I mean, the way I look at it is, I mean, I would suggest AppSec for this individual with just knowing what's here on screen. But a lot of times too, you have to marry up, hey, what are my interests, not just what am I good at. So that's always a challenge, and candidly, it's something I've struggled with the majority of my career as well. So yeah, I mean, I think it's up to the individual at the end of the day. But just looking at what's here, I mean, my first suggestion would be AppSec. And there's
cool.
Hundreds of flavors of AppSec too, right? Just because you're in a specialty doesn't mean it's done differently in plenty of different places. And there are plenty of different tools, and there are plenty of different ways to slice it. Just like I was talking about earlier, like working in a static analysis or dynamic analysis or interactive, right? There's so many different ways, and I guess that's the beauty, but it's also the curse, right? You can also get into a situation where you're like, I don't want to do this little thing anymore. I want to do like all the things, and then you have to start looking at different roles or different different organizations for sure.
Right. Absolutely. So, okay, awesome. So a couple more people. Kim is here from Vancouver. Alicia says hello from California. Hello. And Newton is here from Boston. Grace says IT support provides you with more skills. It definitely does, because you're seeing all the headaches that other people are having. So
Right.
anytime, I mean, the reason why I know folks say people shy away from help desk, I get it, especially with the degree, right? Because
Right.
you spend all this money, you have a degree. It's just like, well, I could have gone on help desk out of high school. Like,
Right.
Why am I doing this? However, I understand where the folks that are coming from are saying, like, you learn so much from being in these support roles and these analyst roles. And it's not only help desk, there's a myriad of other entry level or early career types of roles, like for people who just don't have a lot of experience in technology as a whole. Help desk is one of the biggest, broadest ones. Do they still have desktop support? Is that still?
I mean, plenty of companies that these days are returning to work in person. So you need those folks, whether they're contracted or they work full time for the company. So maybe it's a little different these days. It's maybe there's fewer people that do that, or they have, like, these days I know a lot of companies are transitioning to a more centralized in-person help desk model. So you bring your
Right.
equipment to that as opposed to them coming to
Right.
your desk. So
Right.
yeah, I
So
see
help
something.
desk desktop is kind of similar. I'm dating myself for sure.
It's okay. No,
For
no, it's
sure.
okay. I remember the old days when companies actually had in-house, help desk folks where it wasn't mostly or 100% outsourced. So it
Oh
definitely,
yeah,
yeah,
I remember that too. That you could go down and see the person.
right. No, I remember that
You
too.
could
I,
go
I used to
see
work
the.
across when I was a sysadmin. We were co-located with the help, not very close to them, but I would walk by them to get coffee in the morning. So and they were all friendly, and they don't exist as much anymore. So
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, okay, so let's see. After 15 years in security, just changed to PCI and am now an ISA just to mix it up a little. And I don't know which LinkedIn user this is, so I'm going to pull that up in a second. But I do want to, Dan, I want to be cognizant of time. I know we started a little bit late
sure.
and we are coming up on 35 minutes after the hour. Do you have another couple minutes just
Oh,
to?
sure, absolutely.
Okay.
No, and it's my
Okay,
and for the
perfect.
audience's awareness, it was my fault. My other machine, the webcam, the internal webcam decided to go on a fritz, and that was 100% on me. I should know better. I picked the wrong laptop today, clearly.
It's all good. Many times it is me with my varying activities. You probably hear some kids carrying on in the background. Um, but that's Joshua Kennedy, who said that he just, after 15 years of security, changed to PCI. So, people go back and forth, which is nice to switch it up, mix it up, learn something new. It's always good. Sam says, thank you very much, sir, for providing his, an update. So Grace has a question. How can I get into hands-on security rather than RMF controls my words, quote, paperwork or technical secretary?
Um, so that's really interesting, right? And to go back to what you were saying about, there are people who work in people who go back and forth a lot between risk and audit and cybersecurity. And I feel like that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's healthy because you need to be, I think you need to have a broad understanding of risk and controls in cybersecurity. And the cybersecurity folks, you need to have a good understanding of each other, right? Because one typically drives the other, or one is influenced by the other. So I think it's helpful to have that crossover experience, and also to switch it up, as I think the prior commenter mentioned. So how about getting into hands-on security? I mean, the way I look at this is I think it's okay to use Grace's words, technical secretary. Believe me, I know what that is because we have a lot of them where I work. I'm not knocking them; they're needed, right? We have to push paper a lot of times, and we need to push our vendors sometimes. And some of the best people to do that are the people who are organized and can do that work. So I wouldn't, if you're morally opposed to it, then I would say, hey, like, don't do it. But I don't think there's any harm in that, to use it as a stepping stone, as long as you understand that you're going to time limit it, and that it is a stepping stone, and that you don't have a fear of getting stuck in it, right? Because that would be my worry for you, that hey, you would get stuck in it, or feel like you're trapped or pigeonholed, right? So I think I understand, like, if I can read into that a little bit, the context is like, hey, I don't want to get stuck here. And I guess the other question for Grace is, hey, where are you coming from? Because if you're coming from an area that isn't traditional security, or that a hiring manager like me wouldn't necessarily recognize, you may need to go through that controls or risk management space, or that technical secretary space, to kind of get that experience, and at least to brush up on the word, the words that are commonly used, the jargon in the industry. I hate to admit to that, but I think as a hiring manager myself, I listen for those things, and for better or for worse, like, if a candidate can speak in those words, and we can have a conversation in those words, that makes it a little bit of an easier conversation. I'm not saying it's necessarily right, but I think having an understanding of the of the commonly used words in the field, and also, like, being able to point to experiences. So, hey, if you have experience in controls and risk management and things like that, that's 100% okay to point to and say, and I can apply those things here. So I think you're noticing it, like, kind of a theme here. It's like having experience and having skills that you can point to that translate well into cybersecurity, which, candidly, there's plenty of opportunity for that, right? Outside of coming from an entirely different field. Like, if you were if you're an arborist working on trees all day, like, I think it would be kind of hard to parlay that into cybersecurity. But I think it, again, going back to those adjacent fields, I think that's a great opportunity to build that expertise, even if it isn't a traditional security role. But yeah, looking at audit, controls, risk, things like that. I mean, you can't get any closer to cybersecurity without actually being in it when you're looking at those roles. And I like people like that because they have a really open mind and they're not always focused on the technical solution. Because I can't tell you how many times, and I've got some awesome people on my team, but they are just focused on what tool can I use to fix this? Not, hey, maybe there's we can do a technical and a non-technical solution to this and marry them together, and it doesn't have to be costly or complex. So, and those are the right kind of people that I'd love to onboard in my field for sure. But I believe we lost Renee. I'm not sure where she went. Hopefully she'll be back with us shortly.
Hey, Dan.
Hey there.
Sorry about that. My internet, everything just went out. Like
Oh
it
no.
flashed, everything went black. So I'm so sorry, and it looks like I think people might be gone. So sorry about that, folks. So I heard you. I was watching actually from hold on one second. I was watching from my phone while it all happened, chiming in saying that my internet was down and I was on my way back. But I heard you giving some great advice to Grace, and sharing with her, like you need the technical writers, you need the folks, technical, quote unquote, technical secretaries, and folks that have the controls experience in all those various backgrounds, and that's about as close to security as you can get. And then, the hands-on piece is probably just, and I don't know if you said this, partnering or getting even closer, using that day job to get you into the more hands-on stuff, like understanding, maybe connecting with someone there that you build a bond with or whatever, and saying, hey, what can I learn? The few things that I can potentially pick up to get more hands-on. I'm really interested in getting hands-on. I'm passionate about this. Yes, my day job is the RMF control space, but
Right.
I really want to get hands-on, and what else can I do? So great advice. So InfoSec Live say here, nothing wrong with making your own luck, which is, I agree 100%. So Dan, I am going to, it is 43 minutes past the hour. I just wanted to come back on and wrap up and have you give any good advice. If you have one piece of sage advice that you wanted to give to folks, started out as a sysadmin, it's been 10 years, and pivoted on into security, what would you tell them?
I would say never give up. And I think one of the things and that maybe that's like cliche or whatnot, right? But I think one of the things that people don't talk about enough is where they failed. And I'll say that it took me at least 2 or 3 different tries to get into security. My first try, it was really rough because I really wanted to be into it. I had a great interview. I had a great relationship with the hiring manager, but I knew that there were people more skilled than me who were gonna, who ended up getting that role. Don't give up, and don't let a no be a never, right? Because if you let that be the case, then you stand to lose a lot more. Keep interviewing. I think you'll find that you'll eventually get to a sweet spot where it's not an interrogation, right? Obviously, that's going to depend on the hiring manager, but it's not an interrogation for you. You're just looking at the next opportunity to see how things work out for you. And so, yeah, I would say, continue to be passionate about it. Don't let a no turn you sour, because you're going to get it at some point, right? The longer you're at it, just statistically speaking, the more likely it is that you're going to get that opportunity that you're looking for. And I think I did see one of the questions come in. I just want to, if I can, add something else on. Someone was asking about if they like what would be a good place for what was it, mentorship or some, are there resources that help people pair with, and I'm active on Cyber Mentor Dojo. I don't know how many people use that. I've gotten a few mentees through that, and there's some awesome folks out there that are really interested in getting that. I'm plugging that. I don't own it. I don't have any interest in it. It's just I'm just active on it, and I found a lot of great folks that are interested. So I'm there if you want to reach out to me through that mechanism, and I'm always happy to talk to people about more personal advice based on their interests and where they've been. So yeah, I mean, it's been a real pleasure, Renee, and appreciate the time, and hopefully this was helpful to folks here, and really enjoyed the conversation this afternoon.
Same here. I really, really, truly enjoyed it. Thank you so much, Dan. And folks, so we will see you again next Thursday and next Friday. Next Thursday for Breaking Into Cyber CISO Thursdays, and next Friday for Breaking Into Cybersecurity. But it should be on Chris's LinkedIn profile. So we'll see you next week. Bye, everybody.